Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, an Israeli woman is still missing after a terror attack in Berlin. The Israeli Prime Minister says Israel is ready to take in wounded Syrians, and an archaeological discovery is made just in time for Hanukkah. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. We open with some breaking news. Former Israeli President Moshe Katseh has been released from prison after serving 5 years for rape. The disgraced leader was supposed to serve 7 years in jail but appealed several times for early release. His initial attempts were rejected because of his failure to show remorse for his actions. But now the parole board claims that he has expressed regret. Last week, the former leader allegedly admitted that he had behaved inappropriately towards the women that accused him of sexual assault, and he even broke down in tears. Suffice it to say, his victims don't believe tears are enough to allow for his release after serving in prison for 2 counts of rape. The state prosecution says it will not appeal the decision to release Katseh, and it's unlikely that the Supreme Court will have success in appealing the move. Prison officers claim Katseh behaved impeccably in prison, and now that he's been released, the former leader must continue to check in with a parole officer and attend a rehabilitation program and therapy. He's also forbidden from speaking to the media. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is condemning the apparent terror attack in Berlin, Germany, and appealing for the international community to stand together as the Islamic State claims responsibility for the incident. Just 2 days ago, a truck deliberately smashed into crowds of people at a Christmas market in Berlin, killing 12 and injuring 50. One of the wounded is an Israeli whose wife is currently missing. The Israeli leader is now offering the Jewish state's condolences to the German people and the families of those killed in the violence.
ישראל מגנה מה שנראה כהתקפת טרור בגרמניה. אנחנו שולחים תנחומים למשפחות ההרוגים, כמובן לממשלת גרמניה, וגם החלמה מהירה לפצועים שכוללים אזרח ישראלי. ההתקפה הזאת מצטרפת להתקפות נפשעות. הטרור פורץ בכל מקום. אפשר להילחם בו רק על ידי כך שנלחמים בו, ואנחנו נביס אותו. אבל נביס אותו הרבה יותר מהר, עם כל האומות החופשיות והמותקפות יתאחדו כדי להביס את הטרור.
While the Islamic State is claiming responsibility for the attack, today German police are conducting a manhunt for a Tunisian man whose ID card was reportedly found under the driver's seat of the vehicle. Netanyahu says what happened in Berlin is just one of many other reprehensible attacks as terror spreads. As he vows it will be overcome, the Israeli leader is stressing that it can be defeated far faster if all the free nations under attack unite. Meanwhile, Israel remains deeply concerned over the fate of one Israeli couple who were at the center of the terrible attack in Berlin. The husband remains hospitalized for severe injuries while the wife's whereabouts are still unknown. Rami Eliakim is reportedly on a ventilator and under sedation ahead of a third expected surgery for severe injuries to his limbs. The 60-year-old Israeli is being described as in serious but stable condition, but his wife Dalia, who's also 60, has officially been declared missing. The two were together at the time of the truck ramming, but she hasn't been seen or heard from since the horror erupted nearly 2 days ago. The couple's son and daughter are now in the German capital to comfort their father and help in the desperate search for their mother. Both have provided DNA samples in case that becomes necessary. One Israeli diplomat says that 24 of the attack victims remain in the hospital and some still haven't been identified. Embassy staff say they remain optimistic that Dalia El-Kayim will be found alive, although they're also making the rounds at local morgues and hope against hope she isn't among the fatalities. The Israeli couple was on a holiday visit to Berlin from the coastal city of Herzliya, north of Tel Aviv. Hundreds of Israelis gathered in Tel Aviv this week to protest the atrocities taking place in Syria, and it looks like their demonstrations are having an impact. The Israeli Prime Minister has now announced that Israel is ready to take in wounded Syrians from Aleppo.
Over the course of the last 6 years, Syria has been engaged in one of the most violent civil wars in history. Over 400,000 people have been killed, but it isn't until now that we're seeing massive demonstrations take place all over the world. Tonight, we're here in Tel Aviv, where hundreds of Israelis are coming together to stand in solidarity with the people of Syria.
I think many of us feel a lot of frustration with the massacre that is going on in Syria, and that we can't do anything. And that's the least we can do, go out in the streets and show that we care.
In 2010, a series of protests and demonstrations broke out against Middle Eastern regimes across the Arab world. The outbreak, known as the Arab Spring, made its way to Syria in March of 2011, after 15 boys were detained and tortured for having written graffiti in support of the protests. Peaceful protests broke out in support of the teenagers, and the Syrian government responded by killing hundreds of demonstrators and imprisoning many more. Just months later, defectors from the Syrian military formed the Free Syrian Army, a rebel group aiming to overthrow the government, while other rebel groups began to pop up across the country. And Syria quickly began to slide into civil war. An estimated 470,000 people have been killed since then, many of them innocent civilians and children.
كنا حالة راكبين بالمساكن، تاني نهار طلعنا دخل عليها الجيش أخده. طلعنا كل ما نطلع من المنطقة يدخل عليها. طلعنا منها نزل علينا برميل قتل ابن عمتي وعمي تصوب في وأمي في راسه وابن خالتي كمان في راسه.
Syria lies just a few hundred kilometers away from Israel, but Israel has long maintained an official position of neutrality in the country's conflict. While Israeli hospitals have treated over 2,600 wounded Syrians, the victims are generally sent back to the war zone after they've recovered.
Israel maintains a policy of not admitting Syrian refugees for demographic reasons. They're seen as a threat. Israel allows people to enter for medical care.
I think the Israeli government does a lot, and it does a lot behind the scenes because it doesn't want to be seen supporting Assad.
So the biggest question on my mind is, does Israel have more of an obligation to help the people of Syria, given the dark history of the Jewish people?
I think that the people of Israel, we of all people, should know what is genocide, and we need to be in the help of another being, no matter who he is and why.
I absolutely think that as a country established by refugees and for refugees, we have to accept Syrian refugees, or at the very least increase the aid that we provide to IDP camps for displaced persons. On the border with the Golan, there are 5 IDP camps. The living conditions there are horrendous. Israel should be doing more, first of all, to protect these camps by ensuring that any plane that flies over there and bombs it will be shot down, and by providing additional aid to those camps.
Yet not every Israeli believes Israel should be as focused on the conflict in Syria. Israel and its northern neighbor have formally been at war for decades, and for some, that's hard to forget.
I don't think Syrian refugees should be spilling into Israel because I do think it's a security threat, and because it's a small country and I don't think there's room. But I do think that Israel could be doing a lot more to help refugees in Jordan and Lebanon, because they're also a security threat to the region.
Despite conflicting opinions throughout the country, more and more Israelis are fighting for Israel to get more involved in the Syrian conflict. A mere 3 weeks ago, the Syrian government launched a military offensive on the previously rebel-held Syrian city of Aleppo, and the bloodshed has been devastating.
Generally, international attention is really focused on ISIS, even though the regime and Russia are responsible for the deaths of over 95% of civilian casualties in Syria. It's state terrorism by the Assad regime, by Iran, and by Russia.
The Israeli Prime Minister has now taken a stand and is instructing his government to find ways to extend medical assistance to wounded Syrians, especially those in Aleppo.
We're prepared to take in wounded women and children, and also men if they're not combatants. We'd like to do that. bring them to Israel, take care of them in our hospitals as we've done with thousands of Syrian civilians.
The Israeli leader claims that ultimately there's very little Israel can do to help resolve the situation in Syria, but that the Jewish state will do everything it can to help mitigate the suffering of the people. The Netanyahu government has backtracked on its support for mixed prayer at the Western Wall, and the Jewish diaspora is upset. At least that's the view of political pundit Mitchell Barak, who told ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that Netanyahu has bowed to the pressure of his coalition's ultra-Orthodox parties, and it's coming at the expense of the unity of Jews around the world.
Well, the problem is the diaspora, when Netanyahu negotiated it, the diaspora Jewry didn't know whether it was his right hand that was signing the agreement or the left hand that was signing the agreement. Whereas he may have been well-intentioned, it's now time for Netanyahu to possibly change his mind because of internal coalition issues. I think this government has had a sad record when it comes to diaspora Jewry, when it has certain members of Knesset who are in the coalition insulting diaspora Jews, insulting Reform Judaism. This has become standard practice, certainly within the Shas party, to say things like this and to kind of not give them access to pray, to daven at the Western Wall. It's not surprising, it's unfortunate, and at some point, the diaspora Jewish community is going to say that they've had enough. And, you know, in this time when Israel is losing friends worldwide and there's a massive movement to kind of box Israel into the corner based on Israeli policies here, it would be wise to recognize, it would be wise of the Israeli government to recognize that we have strong supporters, namely the Jewish community in the United States and other places, that are not Orthodox per se, but that should be counted.
Within the governing coalition, not from the left parties that are in opposition, but within the governing coalition, is there any party that's going to stand up to Shas and say, we will not support that kind of legislation, we're going to block it, and we're going to push hard and insist on the agreement that Netanyahu reached with the diaspora? Well,
the problem with any party doing that in government is that Shas will throw in the religious, their religious hat, if you will, their black hat, if you will, and say, well, we can't agree to that. No matter what you say, our rabbis have said we can't agree to that. So if that means bringing down the government, so be it. So now what is the Likud and the Bayit HaYehudi and the other parties are going to do when they do want to support diaspora Jewry? Are they going to bring down the government over this issue? I don't think so. They'll have to either try and find a compromise or delay it again and again. But this is a government that, you know, Netanyahu had the distinction of, when he had Yair Lapid in his government, of putting in certain rules and regulations regarding the ultra-Orthodox, cutting budgets, making sure that they learn certain secular subjects like math and English and so forth. And the same Netanyahu actually worked to cancel that very same legislation that he had put into place with Yesh Atid. So we see that, certainly.
Mitchell Barak, thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you.
The showdown over the imminent evacuation of the Amona outpost continues to escalate. And now, just 4 days before the deadline, the state is once again asking the court for more time. Aaron, what is the problem here and what is expected to happen?
Basically, when the government, approached Amona, they offered them as a bargaining chip to get them to sign the agreement. They said, we'll postpone the evacuation. Well, they've only have 4 days before that postponement can actually be carried out by, by the High Court. And so they're getting worried and they're threatening to basically say, we're not gonna stand by our deal if you won't stand by yours.
The government says it needs another 45 days to properly prepare temporary housing solutions for the families slated to be evicted. The 76-page petition was filed as part of an agreement with the residents of the illegal West Bank outpost in exchange for their promise to leave their homes peacefully. The deal also permits 24 of the 41 families to move to a nearby plot of land, while the state not only builds permanent homes for all of them, but also creates an entirely new settlement in the area. If the court approves the latest appeal, the eviction would be postponed to February 8th of next year. But if the High Court of Justice rejects the motion, the settlers are now threatening to reconsider their deal with the state that ensured that no violence during the December 25th withdrawal would occur. The court ordered Amona to be dismantled after ruling that it stands on privately owned Palestinian property.
Every week, we report on some of the incredible life-saving discoveries that are made in Israel. Joining us today in the studio is Amir London. He's the CEO of Kumada Pharmaceuticals, and he's here to talk to us about some of the innovative products his company is developing. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
So, to begin, what are these products in your company's portfolio? I'd love to hear about them.
Okay, thank you. Kumada is an Israeli-based international biopharmaceutical company. The products we make are what's called plasma-derived products, which means that we start our production with plasma or with blood, and our technology is in the purification of that starting material into specific proteins and specific immunoglobulins for the treatment of life-threatening diseases.
Interesting. Now, what are some of these diseases that you guys are dealing with?
Okay. Our lead product is called Glacia. It's a protein. It's an alpha-1 antitrypsin protein, which is a protein which is developed. It's produced by healthy individuals in the liver, and it has a lot of different properties, a lot of different functions in our body. There is a genetic disorder, people that are born with lack of self-production of that protein, and those people will develop a very severe lung disease. Usually symptoms start at around age 30 to 40, and their situation will worsen over time. They will need to get a lung transplantation, and eventually, unfortunately, they will die from that disease. What we do, we purify the plasma into that specific protein, and we give it to the people as a chronic treatment, augmentation treatment, in order to elevate the level of protein in their blood, and this way basically to protect their lungs and to allow them to live a much better, healthy life.
So the products that you are offering are specifically for this disease. Are there any other diseases as well that your products?
Yes, we have different products. This is our lead product, what I mentioned. Other products are, again, for life-threatening diseases. For example, we have a product for anti-rabies, people that are exposed to a rabid animal. So it's a prophylactic treatment. Those people will get to the ER and will get our vaccine that will basically save their lives.
Wow, that's huge. Now, you know, what inspired your company to focus on research and development into these illnesses more specifically?
Okay, so we are in what's called the rare disease space, what's called orphan designation drugs. These are diseases that are rare, less than 100,000 people, for example, in the US or in Europe. And the regulators are giving specific incentives for companies to develop products for those rare diseases. Okay. And we are in that space. Okay. We have a very highly innovative technology around the purification of those products. And based on the technologies that we were able to develop, we are targeting our product to that orphan space, rare disease space, in order to bring medicines for the unmet medical needs.
Now, are these products already on the market? Can people access them, or are they still being tested?
So we do have product on the market. We are a commercial company already. We are selling our products in over 20 countries already, including the US. So we are an FDA-approved company, FDA-approved facility where we make the product ourselves. And the products are available. Yes, of course, we are also developing additional indication, additional products.
What are you developing right now? What are you working on?
So for our lead alpha-1 antitrypsin product, it's in development currently for additional 3 indications. Exactly same product, using its properties to treat other disease, again, life-threatening diseases, around the immune system. So we are currently testing it for what's called GVHD, which is a very severe complication of a bone marrow transplant. We are testing it for a lung transplant rejection, and we are testing it for type 1 diabetes. So all 3 programs are in clinical development, currently in phase 2 development, and we hope to bring those products to the market also in the years to come.
Those are more common diseases than some of the ones you mentioned before, no? I mean,
type 1 diabetes is more common,
right.
Yes, but GVHD and lung transplant are also under what's called this orphan designation, meaning it's a rare disease, less than 100,000 people in the US or Europe which are affected by that disease.
Now, what's interesting to me is, Kumada Pharmaceuticals is based here in Israel, correct?
Correct.
Why do you think that there's so much development happening within Israel when it comes to fighting these diseases more specifically?
Right. So we were fortunate to have the ability to develop this technology, of this purification technology, which is the best in the industry, the best in the world, basically. As an example, we're the only company in the world that are able to develop this product, alpha-antitrypsin, as a liquid, ready-to-infuse product, while our competitors, which are huge companies, are able to develop it only as a powder that needs to be mixed with water before it can be administered to the patients. The fact that we have a liquid, ready-to-infuse product gave us a major advantage. People prefer to use our product versus the competitors because it's easier, because it's safer. Okay? So we are very innovative in the way we develop the product and the different indications that we take it. And this is based on the fact that we are a relatively small company compared to the giants of the pharmaceutical world, and we're highly dedicated to that specific protein, to that specific product, and we take it all the way, leading the world in that regard.
So what is next, for your company? You spoke about some of these products, but how does your company work to I guess, get international coverage and international awareness about what you're creating?
Okay, good question. So we are publicly traded on the Tel Aviv Exchange and the NASDAQ. So we are known, and we have investors from the US, from Europe, all around the world investing in Kumada. We are on a very fast growth mode currently. We finished last year at around $70 million sales. We gave a projection for this year to be between $75 to $80 million, and we gave already a projection for next year that we are going to reach $100 million sales.
How old is the company?
The company has been around for quite some time, but we've kind of reinvented ourselves a few years ago, moving from more of the generic product into the innovative rare disease product. So we've been around, but we are young in terms of being in the innovative orphan space.
So, if we have viewers who are interested in accessing the products that you guys are offering, how can they do that?
So, the products are available. Like I mentioned, they are FDA approved and they are being sold in many countries around the world. Because it's very special products, so usually those patients are being treated in specialty medical centers, and the physicians know how to get those products. If someone is suffering from a rare lung disease, okay, they need to be tested for that alpha-1 deficiency, what I mentioned before. And if they are found to be alpha-1 deficient with this genetic disorder, the physician will know basically how to prescribe the drug and can get it from us.
All right. Well, it's amazing to hear about all these products that you guys are creating. It seems like you're already having a huge impact on the world, and I think we're all excited to see what comes out next. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
There's been a wonderful discovery right outside of the Tower of David in Jerusalem's Old City, just in time for the Jewish holiday of Hanukkah, which begins this Saturday. A bronze penny turned up during minor restoration on a part of the Hasmonean-era wall running through the citadel's courtyard. The dreaded face of the Antiochus Epiphanes is inscribed on one side. He's the Greek tyrant who tried to Hellenize the Jewish people by forbidding religious observance. Although they were greatly outnumbered, a group of Jews led by the family of Judah Maccabee fought for their freedom to worship, and ultimately emerged victorious over the mighty Greek military. The lighting of a menorah on Hanukkah commemorates the triumphant rededication of the Second Holy Temple in Jerusalem, which is why the holiday is known as a festival of lights. The newly discovered coin dates back to sometime during the time Antiochus reigned, between 172 and 168 before the Common Era. One archaeologist even speculates it may have been part of the salaries paid to the ancient troops trying to suppress the Maccabee revolt. The other side of the coin is always better, as you know, and on this we see the image of a goddess holding something that looks like a torch. And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Whip out your smartphone or head to the nearest high-tech store, and within a few minutes, you too could be jumping onto the augmented reality train. So today's word is metziut, meaning reality. Now, while metziut meduma, or virtual reality, can be fun, you need to be careful next time you think about catching that Pokemon. Not just from the physical dangers of maybe not paying attention to your surroundings, but also from losing touch with your metziut. In fact, knowing what's real and what's not has always been a pesky problem, literally and figuratively. According to Albert Einstein, reality is the illusion, albeit a very persistent one. So I guess the message of today's word is that whatever you substitute for metziut in your life, make it really good. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
Tonight should be partly cloudy with a slight rise in temperatures to a low of 50 or 10 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect it to be partly cloudy with scattered showers and a daily high of 59 or 15 degrees Celsius. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.84 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. Thanks for watching and see you tonight.